Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You look good out there, baby.
everyone, and welcome to the Smoking Glass Hour with Bear and Glass. We are honored to have you as a guest tonight and want to thank each of you for your faithful support. Without further delay, allow me to introduce to you Mr. Bear and Glass. Mr. Glass, take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Smoking Glass Hour with Bear and Glass on WMAD 24-hour global radio. Tonight, we're going to be talking to Miss Barbara Boyden Walters. She's affiliated with the Texas Democratic Party. She is a graduate of University of Texas at Austin. Tonight, we're going to talk about a lot of issues. We're going to talk about pay equity involving women. We're going to talk about reproductive health and rights and Planned Parenthood. We're going to talk about Title IX and gender equity in education. We're also going to talk about Social Security and economic security for aging women. Now, more importantly, we're going to talk about the Supreme Court of the United States of America along with affirmative action. So without further delay, Miss Barbara Boyden Walters, how are you doing tonight?
Fine, Baron. Thank you very much for having me. I'm really looking forward to the evening conversation.
Well, I'll tell you, Barbara, I always, and I hope it's okay if I call you Barbara, otherwise I show the respect that my 84-year-old mother gave me, which I'll say Miss Walters if I need to, because I want to make sure, number one, that you're comfortable, and number two, that everything that you want to discuss or that you're passionate about, that the listening audience that's out there, which comprised of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Baltimore, Maryland, Dallas, Texas, Houston, Texas, we're looking at Louisiana, Arizona, we're looking at Atlanta, Georgia, South Carolina, Jam Vibes Radio is out there. We're looking at Mamou, Louisiana, Lake Charles, Louisiana, Lafayette, Louisiana. So what I'm trying to say is this: your message will be heard all over. So number one, the goal is to make sure that you are happy and that you're comfortable. So what I'm going to do is allow you to add anything else that you'd like to add to the intro. Otherwise, we're going to go directly into the heart of the discussion for the night. But I'll allow you the opportunity.
Sure. Well, I appreciate that we're so far and wide available listener audience beyond Texas. I didn't come to Texas by choice, but I've been here for 26 years and following all the politics here and the legal craziness which is happening all over the country. So I can speak to what's happening at home, but would love to hear from any listeners about how it's resonating for them. I'm quite passionate about women and issues and equality, as you can tell, so we can start talking about it.
Well, I'll tell you, Barb, great way to summarize this, because number one, in order to do anything nowadays, you have to have passion. And number two, you really have to know exactly what it is that you're doing. But number three, we know that most recently, in the last 50 or 60 years, women just became eligible to have the right to participate. And when you look, I did a show the other day, I believe it's 1 in 5 people that's in Congress, or 1 in 5 are congresswomen. So we don't have a lot of representation in the political process. Now, based on saying that, let's start out with Planned Parenthood. And we know that Republican presidential candidate Ben Carson appeared on a conservative talk radio show and expressed his sentiments on Planned Parenthood. Now, he told a host by the name of Jan Mickelson that Planned Parenthood was created for ethnic cleansing. Now, Carson's claim was a response to President Barack Obama saying, "God bless you," during an address to Planned Parenthood. Now, we know that Dr. Carson was saying something that most people really don't agree, even when you look at the extreme on the other party. Now, Carson also continues saying that Planned Parenthood should be defunded and that abortion should be completely banned. Carson said, if we can't defund Planned Parenthood, we're lost. We're just in the wilderness forever. This is the smoking gun. We've always known the kind of organization this is and how anti-life they are. Now, to allow you to start directly with something that you are passionate about, what's your response to Dr. Carson? And tell us specifically about Planned Parenthood and what it is that they do.
Well, Planned Parenthood has been around for 100 years. Now, you had mentioned 50 or 60, but along of it. And the history started, in fact, the founder of Planned Parenthood was Margaret Sanger. She coined the term birth control in 1914. And this is about the ability for a woman to control her life through controlling her reproductive health as a sexually active woman. Prior to that, she had no control over that, owned by the husband, had as many children as that husband wanted, and was just bound by a lot of restrictions that weren't her own. So for people now to talk about and throwing that into your ending life, no, we're trying to respect and allow women to begin their lives and control that. Mm-hmm. And so, no, this isn't about, they've twisted into this is about killing babies. And it really, really isn't. It's about women having control of their lives. And they have since Roe v. Wade in 1973, was it, making abortion legal, they have, especially with Planned Parenthood, has become this horrible lightning rod for them. It's the, I guess to use the metaphor, throwing out the baby with the bathwater. We need to start with family planning when you want to have babies, if you want to have babies, having babies when you can afford them and when you feel you can be a strong and solid parent and have a very good outcome for that baby. So they first chip away through the abortion mechanism into the entire rest of the intent of Planned Parenthood, which is Planned Parenthood. It is, in fact, the other frustration is, well, we have to get rid of them because it's all about abortion. Well, in fact, 3% of the entire funding of Planned Parenthood goes to abortion services. And that 3% is totally privately funded. It has nothing to do with state funding or government funding or anything else. So when you try to say, hey, we don't want any federal funds to go to abortion, they don't. What they're taking away from us is all the family planning for women who need to get their basic health care there. In fact, men, it's not just go and get birth control, but they have cancer screenings, pap smears, sexually transmitted disease testing. All of these things are part of the preventive care for women that they're throwing out because of this 3% of money that's going towards abortion funding that is in name only.
Okay, so Barb, when we look at Dr. Carson's comment, is it fair to say, and I'll let you answer this in your own way, is it fair to say that because some may be against abortion, which is the law of the land, that they go to whatever extremes possible to make sure that the message is flawed and do whatever they can do to defund all of the programs, so that's one less option that they have when it comes to, I guess, women's rights or whatever the case may be?
Right. Yeah, they're ruling towards that exception, and they feel they have the moral high ground on that, and it is not moral. It is not, in my opinion, at all moral. And so the flawed argument, a recent example in Texas, in the legislature, since the last legislature, a couple of years, there was funding for a breast and cervical cancer screening program. Mm-hmm. This was statewide, and it was funded. Planned Parenthood was part of the group because they had established clinics, and they're closing more and more because of all the legalities, all the challenges they're having towards getting clinics to close. But they were part of the funding. So the bill put forth before the legislature this year was, okay, yeah, we'll still do the screening, but we're going to do a tiered approach where our women's clinics will get first dibs And then there's a second tier, and then there's a third tier. So if there's any money left over for that third tier to help with screening, they'll get it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what was the third tier? It was Planned Parenthood, and there's no money left. And it was in my mind, a pretty smarmy way to just try to, kick another, put another nail in the coffin, so to speak, of Planned Parenthood. And it has nothing to do even with reproductive rights, much less abortion.
Mm-hmm. So when we look at Planned Parenthood, we know that it is a nonprofit organization that does research into and gives advice on contraception, family planning, and reproductive problems. If we just take the core and the definition of and what represents Planned Parenthood, why do you think it's so much of a problem with and I'm going to use parties now because it's no other way you can look at it. When you look at the Republicans, Democrats, and/or Independents, it appears that one is for the assistance or the reproductive rights of women, and then the other one is not. So is it really just a party line type of thing, or is it fundamental differences with Planned Parenthood and the things that they do?
I think it is a party line. I know there are Republican women and men who are pro-choice, or at least not as strongly opposed to the basic services of Planned Parenthood, and I know there are probably Democrats that aren't, but it does happen. We have gotten so volatile and so divisive across party lines that it has become very much almost like here's the checklist, and one of the things on the checklist is if you're a good Republican, you'll be against Planned Parenthood.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely that's used that way, and it's what has happened is that with each piece of legislation, and this is in states, Wisconsin's one of the worst lately too. In each state, they're chipping away till there's nothing left, and Roe v. Wade will go out the window. That is the intent. So each thing that they can do, closing down more clinics, okay, we can't get the funding, okay, we can't do that. And the problem is the lack of facts. I wish that we could at least argue what is verifiable and factual. For
mm-hmm.
instance, this
mm-hmm.
latest video
mm-hmm.
that was put out, and it was secretly recorded. It was massively edited. You can look at several of the news media and the New York Times, the TV, and see that they said, no, this has really, really been butchered down. And in fact, I think I heard that it was the same group that was behind the Swift voting as John Kerry,
mm-hmm.
was also totally messed up. So they're taking this and trying to find another thing to say, gee, they're so horrible. Because in effect, the bottom line is they say this video shows that they're selling fetal tissue. And how horrid is that they're selling fetal tissue to make a profit?
Mm-hmm.
Well, number one, they're not selling it at all. Number two, just take any person who has been, let's talk about a woman, let's talk about a man who's had some horrific chronic disease like Parkinson's or like ALS. Don't even put it in the realm of reproductive health. And they're seeking a cure. Their family has been devastated by this illness. And so he says, when I die, I want you to donate like my tissue, my samples, my brain, whatever it will take, that then can be used for research to help wipe out this horrible disease. That's all that Planned Parenthood offers, and it's only done when the woman says, I would like you to do it. Now, the editing of the television, the video, came down to saying they sell fetal tissue. So they can't do it. If they can't win factually,
uh-huh.
then they have to win by deception.
Okay, well, let's look at again the basis of Planned Parenthood, and let's look at the Affordable Care Act. Okay, if you're gonna dispel and you're gonna try to ruin the good things that's going on, what is the alternative from the opposing or the opposition that's out there to Planned Parenthood, because let's take abortion off the table. Let's not even deal with that right now. But if you're talking about issues, and the reason why I'm asking, because I have all women in my family, and I don't feel that I have a right to speak on behalf of any woman when it comes to their body and their concerns and the things that matter most, regardless of whether I agree or disagree with it. It has nothing to do with me. So when we look at Planned Parenthood, is there any other a plan or any other proposal that the Republican Party or anybody else that's out there in opposition, are they presenting that, or they're just saying no, because we fundamentally disagree with Roe versus Wade? But bear in mind, Roe versus Wade is the law just like same-sex marriage and all these other laws that are out there. So what's the difference?
Right. Well, and the place that they go is what they say we have to do is abstinence only.
Mm-hmm.
So they're saying sex is only, they're trying to be very biblical. Sex is within a marriage only. There's no premarital sex. It's a sin. This shouldn't happen there. And if people would just understand and believe in God and abstinence, they wouldn't get pregnant. And so they think they have a solution. But they're looking at pubescent teens, for one thing, and on to the, people who enjoy, who get turned on, whatever they choose to do with that. And they're telling them you just have to say no. And if you don't, then you're a sinful woman, and if you get pregnant because of this abstinence that failed, then you must carry this baby. And it's not just you deserve it, but babies, it's a life that you have to continue. So they're cutting you off before you even have a chance, because we have shown absolutely that abstinence-only sex education does not work. It is not sex education.
Well,
and they're, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Barb, it sounds kind of like the pot is calling kettle black, and I'll tell you the reason why. For many years, when you look at drugs, we've been saying just say no to drugs for almost 30 years. And the fact is, drugs is on the rise every year in every part of the country. So obviously, just saying no is not the issue, because the way I look at it is this: you have intervention and you have prevention. So those who are talking about premarital sex is a sin, yes, we know that. But when you look at those who are going to sin, those who do not believe in the Bible, those who are going to do this, that, doesn't so, are they now saying that those people don't matter because they choose not to believe in what it is that we believe? Because if you look at it, there are more people now who are falling away from the church, who are doing whatever it is that they want to do because the church, in a sense, has failed. So when we look at Planned Parenthood, if they are providing information for those who are not abiding by the laws of the land, which is, the Bible, and doing things on their own, why should it not be viable? Why should it not be an option for a woman to go and get information about something that directly affects them?
Sure. And whether it's a matter of the churched and the unchurched, the believers and non-believers, there still is, I think, and I don't see that anything in the Bible disputes this, but there are men and there are women, and we're equal, and we have to choose our own path, and that is the right that God's given us. He's made us people who will choose. And so I would like to think that me and my daughter and so on, I would say, here are the facts. Here are the ways you could go. Here are the consequences for this and that. Now you think it through and you choose. So what they have cut off first is you cannot have scientifically based, scientifically sound sexuality education. They refuse to do that because they have absolutely, again, falsely said if you teach them how to have sex, they will be more promiscuous. And I can tell you an anecdote from my life, my own life. I was very active in a Presbyterian church in Temple, Texas, before I moved to Plano. And a woman who was a Presbyterian, 11-year-old daughter in this class was not getting information. She created a biblically based sexuality education series for junior high and high school. So I got certified, and I taught this several times to even my own son and daughter in the room. And we told them and showed them everything. We showed them every means of birth control. We showed them the video of the woman the young teenager that kept her baby. We showed them how an abortion happens. We talked the marriage vows from the Bible. We showed them all of this. And then at the end, we said, now what? And they said, no way am I having sex before I'm married, or at least before I'm ready, and I'm sure as heck going to be protected. It is not worth it. So I know that education, that's another of my passions, that if you educate them, you will have a better world, a better outcome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So don't say, no, you can't tell, oh my God, information is bad, information, and that's what they're continuing to do too with, abortions have come down significantly,
mm-hmm.
come down a lot, they have.
Okay, so Barb, when we look at Pastor Riggins and I, which is out there in Houston, Texas, he's out there listening now. We talk about this all the time. We often use a cliche that America was founded on Christianity or the Christian principle. If that be the case, then it was my understanding of the Bible that I read that Jesus loved the sinner, but he hated the sin. So it doesn't say anywhere in there that he didn't do things such as prayer, offer things that a person could utilize. So if we're talking about those who are going out sinning and having premarital sex, why would you not have something that would be intervention? Because they're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
So when you look at the opposition, and I'm going to even take out the party. When you look at opposition, regardless of what side of the coin it falls on, why would we just exclude one and say, okay, we're just gonna provide this for this side, which is the prevention aspect, but do nothing for intervention? Because we know that people, even in the Bible days, they did these things that were against the Bible, because when you're young, you're going to make mistakes. As you get older, you shy away from those mistakes, but you still make mistakes. I guess what I'm trying to, the message that I'm trying to convey is that those who are in opposition, give me something else that you can provide that would be beneficial to those who are going to have premarital sex, because I would like to think that my two daughters would need research, they would need advice, and they would need family planning, and they would need stuff for reproductive problems. Why would a man have the authority and the power to stop my kids from having that?
Yeah, and you hit on one really key word for me, and that is men. And it is the men that are making the rules, the men who are oppressing the women, the men who are saying this, and they are the men, of course, who are not having the baby. And in fact, in I think pre-biblical times, if you think about, maybe, shall I say, to simplify it, the cavemen, there was no marriage then. There was just procreation. And what happened was that men discovered, they see this woman have a baby after about 9 months, and they think, I don't know if it's mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is when they began to pair up with women to say, I want an exclusive right to you because there's no DNA test. I want to know this is my baby. And so you move that into, again, obviously the Christian tradition of marriage is much more than just having the baby. It's everything else, the loving relationship and everything that the Bible says, and I have no dispute with that. But this was about ownership, that it started that way, that a man owns this woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so where does the woman then have her choices? And if you just say, stay home, do what I say, don't read books, or don't go out or whatever, then you're not giving them the means they need to, first of all, say, I respect you, I respect your intelligence, I respect that you are going to ultimately make your choices, so I want to give you as much information as possible. So you have to believe in it, trust it, treat women equally to make that's ultimately going to be our success.
Right. Well, I'm going to give you a specific example as to why a lot of this on the opposition side, it's only for those who can use it when it's for somebody. But now you take, for instance, one of these big time, high powered congressmen or senators who is in office, and they just happen to be going about their life, and they have one of these young female staffers, and they end up getting this individual pregnant. I can guarantee you that abortion is the very first thing that they're going to look at, especially when they are married. So my question is this again. It seems as if the pot is calling the kettle black. So if why can't this be something that's simple, regardless as to what we agree or disagree? Women should have the right to do whatever it is that they want to do with their body, even if I personally may disagree with it. So are we trying to say that women should get more involved in politics, Barb? And if so, what would you advise the listening audience that's out there now? Because my audience is predominantly women, female. And I'm talking in the age bracket of 30 on up to 60 and 70 years of age. So what would you advise for those who are out there listening right now regarding getting involved? Even if they don't run for office, they can get involved by campaigning. They can get involved by, volunteering. They can get involved by going out on social media and talking about these issues. But what would you like to advise to them?
Right. Well, I want to start it with a phrase that I love. Women hold up half the sky. The crazy thing is that was actually coined by Mao Zedong in China, and it was during the People's Republic when there maybe was some, I don't know that women are doing all that well over there now, but I truly believe women hold up half the sky. And there was a pair, Nicholas Kristof and Cheryl Wudun, who wrote a book called Half the Sky, Turning Oppression into Opportunity for Women Worldwide. It was in 2009. But it really struck with me that is really what it comes up to, is that if we use that as the measuring stick of are we believing that we are a 50-50 nation, that women and men are equal. Because what I would say to women is, first, think that through and believe it. I mean, I marched in the women protest movement that you probably can tell from my picture, but I marched in the 70s with the early feminists. Got Gloria Steinem, and I met her. It was so cool. But first, believing that there truly is some oppression going on, whether they have personally experienced it. So it's creating the awareness. It's understanding it. So for some women, it really is some education around it, maybe kind of either thinking about it for the first time or rethinking it and trying to look at multiple sides of issues. So it's finding, creating that understanding. And then the next thing absolutely is, what are the concrete steps that we can take to fight, to solve problems? And those, yes, you can reach out so many different ways. And they're just like Planned Parenthood. Oh my gosh, there's so many volunteer opportunities, and I got such an education through them. One time I went down to one of the high schools in Dallas, and they do this special day program. I think it's on a Saturday for boys and girls. And they go through the realities of teenage life. It's not just based all on sex, but it's just the realities of choosing, making decisions. How do you be assertive? How do you, all these things. And they even have the theater that is made up of the kids with some real life situations they role play. It was so exciting to be there as an observer and a helper. And it just infuses you with a sense of pride that you're doing it, but also a rude awakening to, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Wow, this is different, or it's more than I ever thought, or depressing. Oh my gosh, I didn't know it was this bad, kind of thing. Exposing yourself to that and finding an organization. Another organization that I'm very involved with is the American Association of University Women. Now, in 1881, they were founded because women were not allowed to go to college. And one of the reasons they weren't allowed to go to college is they thought it would affect their menstrual cycle.
Are you serious?
I am serious. I'm serious. And so they said, no, women need to have equity in education. And they have been very powerful. They've got lobbyists in Washington. They have written what they're very good at, I guess, university women, if you will. They focus a little more on the academic research. They've done studies to prove, like, there's hostile hallways, they call it, sexual harassment in the junior high level of girls. And it's very prominent. And then girls who in the 8th grade who've been brilliant suddenly their grades go down. They don't want to show up a guy. 8th grade, oh wow, I've got to have a boyfriend. I can't be smarter than he is. And they have actually shown, and I hope this has changed a bit because this is maybe 10 years ago, but that girls would just back off because they couldn't outshine a boy. And why wouldn't they? Where is their own self-esteem, their own belief in themselves? Because then here's the outcome for that: STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Very underrepresented by women. And it's because they even shut off their own smarts because of all the other things that play into their lives with the opposite sex.
Okay, Barbara, if you don't mind, we're going to pause right now for about a minute and 30 seconds, and we'll be right back. I'm going to pick up with one of the comments you made, oppression, and we're going to talk about oppression in 2015 when it comes to women. We're going to go directly into the pay equity standpoint. So if you'll hold on for just 1 second, we'll be right back in about a minute and 30 seconds.
Great, thanks.
Hello, this is Baron Glass, host of the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass on the all-new #1 global radio station, WMAD. Before I do my live broadcasting, I always dine in at the all-new Main Street Seafood Restaurant located in downtown Columbia, Louisiana, owned and operated by Mitch Brett. Check them out. I did.
We are back broadcasting live with the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass. Tonight we have Miss Barbara Walters talking tonight about women's topics. We took a break, and we're coming back. We're talking about some things that are very concerning when it comes to women. And when we look at women nowadays, if you look at African Americans, if you look at other parts of the country, other segments of the country, the #1 thing, Barb, that everybody's talking about is oppression and or suppression on the rise again. So when we look at oppression in 2015, and when we take some of the comments that you've talked about when it comes to women still not having their fair shake when it comes to the equity and all these things according to what life has to offer. When we look at pay equity, we know that women in every state experience the pay gap, but some states are worse than others. The best place in the United States for pay equity is in Washington, D.C., where women were paid 91% of what 91% rather of what men were paid in 2013. At the other end of the spectrum, if you look at Louisiana, which is my state, the worst state in the country for pay equity, where women were paid just 66% of what men were paid. Talk to us, Barbara, about that pay equity that you are so passionate about.
Sure, and you're right about the gaps. I don't know if you saw this was up on Facebook, but you know that the $10 bill is going to have a woman's face on it. We're
correct.
Going to get a woman on a bill in 2020. So people are being asked to come up with the ideas of what woman they would like on there. Well, there's a video on the AAW site that suggests that when we draw the bill, it's actually changing the 10 to a 7.8. So in the four corners where the 10s are. And it's because the $10 bill is worth less for women. It's 78 cents to every dollar men earn across the board, and then, as you said, there's some inequity that's even much greater depending on place. Some states are worse than others, as you said. So by state, for example, I'm here in Texas. It is 75 to 79% lower. Teeny tiny up in Washington, D.C., it's actually 90 to 94 cents to the dollar. But down in Wyoming and Louisiana, it's below 69 cents to the dollar.
Correct. So
it is just pretty awful all over. And we've got it's been 50 years since the Equal Pay Act, which has. And I heard Governor Perry say it. I'm sure there have been legislators recently saying, we don't need it. There's a law in the books. It's fine. We don't need to sign a new law. That's crazy. And it's the disrespect for the reality of women, because I think if it's 78 cents for white women, it's, I think, about 65% for African American, and like 59% for Latinas.
Right, and you're going directly because it says that the pay gap is worse for women of color. The gender gap affects all women, but for women of color, the pay shortfall is worse. Asian American women's salaries show the smallest gender pay gap at 90% of what white men earning. Hispanic women's salaries show the largest gap at 54% of white men earning. White men are used as a benchmark because they make up the largest demographic group in the labor force. So if we look at this statistics that we are providing, is it still that old slave man mentality, or that old Jim Crow, divide and conquer, or that old, Willie Lynch, where you just oppress those who you feel are beneath you? And if we're going to look at oppression, how can we continue to go forward and say that America's principle was built on Christianity when we are oppressing?
Right. And that's absolutely, I think that oppression is there. I think there's more to maybe the root cause of it. Those are certainly the beginnings of it, the oppression first of slaves and of both gender, male and female, and then the females, my gosh, being raped and subjugated to the white plantation owner, and it just went down. I don't know how further downhill it could go, but it didn't go uphill enough, right, to fix that. But we're also talking about, again, a lack of awareness of this, because he is equal pay for equal work. Okay, so maybe you can think, well, a woman who's doing housekeeping isn't going to earn as much as a man who's a middle manager in a corporation. Okay, fine. But why aren't there more women managers, right? And when we get those women into that management role, they still aren't making as much as the man. So there's inequities in the pay scales and in the STEM jobs that I talked about. So many fewer women in science, technology, engineering, and math, and those tend to be much higher paying jobs. And it's not because women are dumber. Then you slide back into, do they get the same opportunities for education? Well, not if they're not given sex education so they can prevent having a baby when they're a single woman or they're raped, and then they can't get through school, and so even if they're really smart, they can't get to college, and no one's along the way supporting them emotionally as well as financially. So there's just so many pieces to this that don't work out well, and the woman always is the loser in that process. So
if we take married couples, and it appears that in the couples that I'm aware of, other than unless it's a same-sex marriage, it appears that a woman should have the same say-so in the home as the male. And if that be the case, it would appear to me that more women would be telling their husband and convincing them that it's time to make a change. And if so, otherwise, I guess what I'm saying is, Barb, I'm not understanding why in 2015 we still have this fear of other people or other genders actually outdoing us, when we know on any given day there's always somebody who has more talent or who has a different gift than what we have. So why is that fear still existing in 2015 in the 21st century?
Well, I sure wish I knew, because I know in the early days of feminism it was, gee, I have a job, my husband has a job, but when I come home I have another job and he doesn't. Mm-hmm. And we made strides in saying share the household chores, or feel that if you are the stay-at-home mom, you're not just a housewife and you have earned half of his paycheck, etc. And even women now who are able to actually earn more than a man, or a few men who can be the house husband or the dad that stays at home. So there has been some kind of progress, not nearly enough across the board. There are just so many different things we need to fix. But here's another little challenge. When you talk about the women out there listening and what can they do, think of the word empower, to be empowered. It's one professor of mine said it's like a one-word oxymoron. Mm-hmm. Because to have power, M is inside, power. I can't give you power. You have to empower yourself.
Correct.
It's kind of, a little craziness there, but the idea that it's not going to change unless I empower myself to be part of the change, be the change you want to be, you know. And I think a lot of women, I'm sure part of it is hopelessness. They look at the history, they look at the suppression, they are maybe in an abusive relationship, they've had their whole history maybe with the father and so on. And so, how do I dig myself out of that? And then you have things like Title IX that aren't working the way that they should be. I went down to Austin during the 84th Texas legislature, and we had a lobby day, we called it, and in fact Planned Parenthood organized it, and we had talking points and were given scheduled appointments. So my appointment, and I will name him, was Representative Matt Shaheen, House District 66, which is mine. And we went into office and we had three things to say. One was about equal pay for equal work. And so he sits down, of course, is a little smart alecky, and he says, okay, let's just see if there's something here we can agree on. And then I came out with the fact that women are still not making as much as men, and that it even depends on race, it gets worse. And he said, well, sincerely, he says, don't you think that that's just because women aren't staying in the workforce as much as men, they drop out to have babies and stuff? And I said, no, that's been disproven. We're talking about dollar to dollar and hour to hour and job to job. Women are not making the same as men. And he goes, and of course he didn't believe me, but we didn't go much further with that argument. But that's that attitude. That's that attitude. Well, it's just because, the women are supposed to stay home and take care of the kids. So that's why, if you look at the end of their earning life, they haven't made as much as a man. So what? Uh-huh. That's not unequal. Mm-hmm. Oh.
So Barb, do you think that you mentioned feminism, and we're going to look at disrespect based on what you just stated with the congressperson. Do you feel like in 2015, in the 21st century, that it's almost like feminism fight all over again, along with disrespect of women from men?
Yep. And women of my age are saying, dang it, why am I having to fight this fight again?
Mm-hmm. Well, and the reason why I ask you that, because my 84-year-old mother always talked to us about what was it like, or what it was like back in the 50s and the 60s when they was coming up through the civil rights era, when they had to go through the back door and all this other kind of stuff. And it appears in the last 6 years that what we thought no longer existed, I'm finding now that it may have been actually dormant. It was just there sitting on idle, waiting for something like this to happen. So if we take those elders, and when I say elders, I'm talking about those who have the wisdom and those who actually dealt with the things that we're now having, to face in 2015. Is it something like we still have this white male dominance, or we still have this lack of respect, or we still have this the majority rule? And if so, how can we get those so-called less than the majority, less than the 1%? Because what I don't understand is and Pastor Riggins gave me this quote, if 1/3 of the world is basically controlled by Anglo-Saxon, and then the other 2/3 of the world is controlled by people of color, it seems as if that's off balance. It would seem to me that the 2/3 could rise up and really get some things done. Is it that simple, or is it really more complicated than what we just discussed?
Well, the complication is that 99% of the wealth in the world is owned by 1% of the people, because that's where the power comes. And so the 2/3 don't have any access or equality, access to that wealth, and that's what ends up. It's you can't win. It's a rigged game, basically. And so look at they're white men in Congress. You mentioned I don't even know how many women. There's less than 1/3 women, right, in our
correct
Congress, and in I don't know Texas, but certainly, thankfully, there are a few people of color, both men and women, and of different religions. Finally, have a Muslim in, and so on. But no, the white men are making these bills. The white men are saying to us, like this one did, Senator Schaefer did here in Texas, with this 20-week abortion thing. Okay, no, you can't have an abortion at 20 weeks. You have to carry that baby to term because it's a living, breathing being. And when someone said, but think of the pain of the woman who knows that baby is malformed and will live maybe 30 seconds at the time she has carried it to term, and it will die. And it's absolutely indisputable that will happen. And he says, well, there is suffering in this world. So like, suck it up. That's it's in the Bible that there's suffering in the world. So too bad. And I have a niece who was thrilled to have a baby. She went in to find out the gender, and she was at 20 weeks. And found out it was a girl and had a name, and so excited. But they did the ultrasound and so on. And the baby was massively deformed, almost no brain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so she did the right thing and aborted the baby, and now has a gorgeous, beautiful daughter who's a year and a half. But there would have been no reason for this woman from 20 weeks to 9 months to carry that baby inside of her away.
Well,
and it is a man saying that. It is
right.
A woman saying.
Exactly. And when we go down the list of pay equity, when we look at women face a pay gap in nearly every occupation, the pay gap grows with every age. And while more education is an effective tool for increasing earnings, it is not an effective tool against the gender pay gap. So when you look at women as a whole, Barb, it's almost like it should be civil rights specifically for women, and that may be a broad statement, but I'll support it. But it appears that there's an attack on you guys.
Yep. Well, and this let me just talk a couple minutes about Title IX, and the thing that was thrilling that we just recently had was this wonderful victory of our women's soccer team. It was phenomenal, right? And that can be attributed to the 1978 law about Title IX, because that was when they said there cannot be sex discrimination in schools, in sports, in the campus, everything around the campus. And it wasn't just about sports, but that would be the key thing with soccer. The number of girls playing soccer went from, in the United States anyway, went from, a few thousand to like 300,000 over the course of the years, because schools were actually providing access to soccer fields, to locker rooms, to coaches, soccer coaches, male or female, giving them that equity, right? So that's one thing. It proves it. There's even a United Nations Gender Inequality Index, which I didn't realize, and it talks about the health and the empowerment and the economic status of men and women. And so FIFA, with the Women's World Cup, it was countries like ours where women do have more opportunities than some of the other countries, Brazil, because of Title IX. But we have not nearly hit it. And then you look at the pay equity. So you've got, okay, we're going to let them learn how to play soccer. In fact, in Brazil, for years. So you've got the women learning the sport and getting excited about it and even proving themselves. But then they got paid $2 million for having won that, the whole, when it was all said and done, that was how much they made. Whereas the 11 men's losing teams each got $8 million for losing. Mm. And yet FIFA, that does this, is a $553 billion company that now is under all this corruption scandal. But the president said, women should wear tighter, cuter shorts, and that'll help. And, women play with a lighter soccer ball, which is false. So you've got not only the inequity in giving them the same opportunities to learn and excel at a sport, you've got the inequity in them not being paid for that. And then you've got the sexism on top of that disrespects them. Mm-hmm. And all of those continue to go hand in hand. So on school campuses, it's the Title IX is also working against sexual assault on campus. 28% of women are targets of that. Pregnant and pairing students are taken away to a less rigorous school setting to separate them. Women get 36% of the athletic operating dollars. So even though they may say, okay, we'll let you have the gym after hours, or we'll let you use this bathroom over here for your locker room, and then the sexual harassment and so on. So it's a law that's in effect, but it is not enforced.
Correct.
It should be.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I just did, Barb. I put out the information on Title IX, so those who are out there listening, it's a federal law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in any federally funded education program or activity, which we all know that stuff happens on a daily basis, and it gets even worse as you go down the line when you move from one race to the other. And see, I'm like this, Barb. I'm a realist. I like to talk about real issues with real people about things that are going on. And there are some who choose to live in that fool's paradise or that delusional aspect that what we're talking about tonight does not exist. Well, I had an older guy in my office today who was talking to me about how it was when he grew up, when he had to go through the back, this, that, and another. He was out there actually baling hay for a guy back when he was a young boy, and he told the guy that he was ready to go. He was finished. Make a long story short, he ended up leaving, and they started looking for him. So his mother feared for his life, and they ended up sending him away from here at the age of 14, and he stayed away about 50-some-odd years before he returned back here. So when we look at all of this stuff that we're talking about, it's quite plausible to me, because I don't understand why people refuse to understand and acknowledge that whether you're a woman, if you're anything else less than the majority, then you have struggles that the majority just refuse to see or refuse to acknowledge. So if we look at that in mind, because I want to make sure that we have the opportunity to encourage women, specifically women, and I'm excluding men, but I'm talking specifically women tonight, because tonight is ladies' night on the Smoking Glass Hour, so we have that flexibility. I want to make sure that women understand that just because male or men are actually calling the shots. It does not mean that they cannot band together and follow a lady like Barbara Walters and some of these other women that are out there who are fighting for this struggle, fighting for this equity and all this. Because when we look at gender equality, equity, you want to talk about as well, which is the process of allocating resources, programs, and decision making fairly to both male and females without any discrimination on the basis of sex, and addressing any imbalances in the benefits available to males and females. Well, we see that on a daily basis, Barb. I think you'd agree with that.
Yep, I totally agree. And I will tell you, back to what can we do about it, I've got two important things. One, with Title IX, do you know that every school has a Title IX coordinator?
Correct.
It may be in name only.
Mm-hmm.
Would say every listener out there, pop into one of your public schools and say, could I talk to the Title IX coordinator?
Mm-hmm.
And AAUW on their AAUW.org has a kit, a toolkit
Mm-hmm.
for helping this to happen. So there's something. Educate about it and maybe get involved. And the other big deal that we haven't really talked about directly is vote.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to affirmative action, and we're going to get to economic security on aging women, and we're going to talk about the Supreme Court of the United States. So if you got time, we'll get to it.
Okay, great.
Okay. If you want to talk about the gender equity, Barb, you can, because like I said, I'm touching every aspect that you indicated that you wanted to touch, because I want to make sure that other women can feel the spirit of your passion and hopefully reach out to you and come to you like we're supposed to be running to Jesus. What must I do to be saved? What must I do to get involved to help promote women? Because after all, somebody can end up having a child that could end up being a female, and at that point they will need all this information. So we have time, but specifically gender equality, what's your passion on that?
Well, it is that getting to where we're holding up half the sky, as I said. It's like in school, so many people don't understand Title IX. Let's just go take a little more time on that. It was created as a federal program to end sex discrimination in schools. Not just on the playing field, in all things. Mm-hmm. And even officials in those schools who are responsible for following the law, these Title IX educators, don't even understand the full scope of the law and how it can be a valuable tool. Not only that, to make the campuses safer. I mean, if you do not feel safe, you're not going to be focusing on getting a good education. That's not going to be what your focus is as a young woman. And they can even be counting, okay, what's the ratio of women and girls and boys in the STEM programs? What's happening with sexual harassment and violence in the school? What are we doing with our pregnant and parenting students, who, by the way, are girls? Where are we putting them? Are we shoving them off into a corner somewhere, and they don't have a chance to get up and out? So much is going wrong with education, and I see the whole business that's happening in Texas with the craziness around school vouchers and taking away funding from schools, and they are absolutely failing. And so that, to me, is about inequity. It's about not giving anybody a fair chance, but again, the women and the people of color are the ones who continue to be the most oppressed, because they have the farthest to climb back out of that, and they're not being given the racism in this country is just, like you said, I don't get it. I don't know where all this has come from again.
Correct.
Other than I think honestly, if they're going to say my whole goal in my life is to make President Obama a one-term president, that is not what any father or any role model should be saying to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
The way they disrespect him and don't use his title, have no respect for that office, that is so much oppression to both genders. It's just...
Somebody like me say that, it's bringing up old wounds. But when somebody like you say that, no one contests that. And I'm trying to understand why, if two people are looking at the same thing, the meaning is different. You cannot separate the message from the messenger. At least that's what I was told. So when we talk about the disrespect, when we talk about all of the vicious stuff that is going on, some say, well, all the previous president went through the same thing, and I'm just not convinced that is the case. To fundamentally disagree, that's one thing. But to just flat out disagree just because on everything, even when you know it's right, I think I have to agree with you when you look at the country as being taught to do things based on all of these social media sites that are out there, all of these large Fox News, MSNBC, C-SPAN, and that's why our message is clear here. Our goal is to try to make a difference by bringing on different walks of life, different people from different walks of life to convey their message, because we don't take a position. We allow people to come on and tell what it is that they are dealing with, how they're dealing with it, and what they would like to do to encourage other people to get involved. So I think you made a valid assessment that some of this stuff has absolutely nothing to do with fundamentally disagreeing. It's actually deeper than that. It goes back to that pre-Jim Crow era.
Yep.
And if that be the case, how can we, as individuals who want to do the right thing, how can we tone that down so we can look at how to move this country forward with Republicans, Democrats, and whoever else that's out there, or whatever party they want to be? Or do you feel like it's too far gone and it's going to take a while for this to come back?
Well, probably I'm on the pessimistic side that it may be too far gone. We have to bring it back, though. It is survival of the nation, of what was good about our nation, how we formed. It is respecting the Constitution and bringing it back into play. It is, if people will read the words of the Constitution, it is a good document. And it's not, the way they're saying that things are going against it, you know what, the other two words I use a lot is civil discourse. We have lost civil discourse. And I've often fantasized about trying to sit down with a staunch Republican woman, and not in a disrespectful way, but just say, please tell me what you're thinking. And if you believe the things that, like, I would like to sit down with Mrs. Boehner, and just say, I carry this two ways. One way I carry it and I say, well, when did you first have sex? And how often did you have sex with your husband? Were you able to use birth control? Could you afford it? Were there any babies you had that you really didn't want to, going that horrible, ugly, how dare you do this to the rest of the world way? Uh-huh. But then the other way is just to say, let's talk about this. Let's talk about men and women and how our country has changed and what you would like to see happen. And try to have truly the open dialogue that just can we dispute what you're saying is a fact, and can we talk through it? Can we show you the scientific evidence, just like climate change? Can we show this to you and at least hope you have at least a partially open mind to conceive that it might be there? You don't have to come away. I will have no hope that you'll leave this conversation knowing that you've been wrong. I can't imagine that happening the first conversation, but I would love to have that conversation. Right. I really would.
Mm-hmm. Right, but because we love somebody does not mean that they're going to exercise the same love in giving it back. And I said that to say it appears that those like you who are out there stomping the ground want to sit down and have a civil conversation about it, but it's either my way or the highway. So if you're taking that approach, not you, but if they are taking that approach, they've been in opposition, then how can we even attempt to move? Because it's like you either look at it my way or don't look at it another way. Now, when we look at the Constitution, it said that all men, are created equal. Well, when that was created, all didn't really mean all, because all wasn't, there were some people who wasn't included even in the Constitution. So when we look at that document, I like to go back and let's move beyond that. But that's part of the facts that we as African Americans deal with, because we wasn't inclusive in that. So when we look and move forward, now that we have the opportunity to be there, but it's kind of like you don't have the right to be there unless I decide when and when you shouldn't be there. So when you look at the fairness, it appears that we still look at the dominance that's out there. And I guess my question and my position is, how do we move beyond all of the ignorance, the fear, and all of the other crazy stuff, and let's move toward one more perfect union, which means that everybody that's here get a fair shake at being and having the same opportunity when it comes to equity, when it comes to women's rights, when it comes to gender equity, when it comes to even affirmative action, because I think that's one of the things that you want to talk about, which is an action, a policy favoring those who tend to suffer from discrimination, especially in the relation to employment or education and other things. So when we talk about affirmative action, some say, Barb, that it should be banned now that we have a black president. What's your take?
That it should be banned, you said?
It's no longer needed, rather.
Ah, gotcha. Yeah, we got as far as a black president, therefore. Yeah. When we get to the affirmative action piece, I do struggle a little more because it's about the legalities. Again, it's focusing on the issues of education and employment and racial minorities and women and everything else there. One thing that had caught my eye was that the Supreme Court recently agreed to review another challenge to affirmative action. And this was that case with the white woman at University of Texas at Austin, who was Amy Fisher, I think her name is. And she felt she was discriminated against because she was white, and they had some quotas, and so she didn't get admitted because of that, and so she was just as discriminated against as some of the minorities would be. And here they're going. I don't know that it's going to work the right way. As Abigail Fisher, she says they violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment because of the university's racial considerations in admission decisions. And in 2013, the Supreme Court found that the appeals court for the 5th District erred by not applying strict scrutiny to those policies. So they're agreeing to hear it again. And I just don't know if this is going to be a new chapter in a 7-year dispute, as they say, to get this. It's been since 2012 when she first brought it there. They ducked it.
Right.
But they just sent it back to the federal courts with instructions to just scrutinize their actual admissions policies. Mm-hmm. And now here again, they're saying, well, maybe we will consider it again.
I was agreeing with you, Barb. Actually, it is a little bit more testier when you start to looking at the specifics and you try to analyze, what exists, what are the merits of the case, and all that other stuff. So when you look at it, I think as long as you have the levels of majority-minority, or you have the 1% versus the 99, or you continue to label liberals versus conservative. As long as you continue to have those titles, because those titles existed back before affirmative action, which led up to affirmative action, until you eliminate all of those other things, then affirmative action has its place for those who fall under the concept of suffering from those who are in the majority.
Right.
So when you look at that, I just think people need to err on the side of caution. When you look at economic security for aging women, you can add, I believe, Social Security in that. When we look at the population of the aging, I believe, Barb, somewhere I saw where it's more than 1 in 8 individuals, or something like 13% of the population is older than 65. There's a projection out there by 2050, 88.5 million Americans, 1 in 5 would be at least 65 years of age, which is a large crowd of growing senior population that faces a future economic uncertainty. Too many who want to live independently with dignity lack the income, the health, or mobility to do so. Research demonstrates that just 48% of the elderly older household have income that cover basic expenses such as housing and medical care. Those now approaching retirement age are even less prepared for retirement than current retirees are, and could have, on average, a lower standard of living once they stop working, assuming they are able to retire at that age. So when we talk about this economic security, what is your concern and worry when it talks about that?
Well, my biggest concern is what Congress has been looking at about doing away with Social Security.
Mm-hmm, right.
And it is economic security for those women that you're talking about. Women tend to live, I think it's 21 years more after age 65, Social Security and so on. They're expected to live 21 years more compared to 19 years for men. And so, and there, as you said, about 56% of all Social Security beneficiaries are women, and 66% of them age 85 and older. So Social Security is keeping them from absolute poverty. Their benefits are maybe about $12,000 a year, which sounds pretty pitiful. But if you did away with the Social Security the way they're talking about it, that it's going broke and it's not solvent and it's not worth it and we've got to privatize it, they will fall through the cracks so big time, because this has been critical in keeping them less poor, shall we say, because women don't tend to have as much going into Social Security as men. And this goes back to all the years of inequity in pay and maybe staying created it so that a woman could take her half of the man's Social Security, because the assumption was she wasn't working and he was. And so maybe one change to Social Security I wouldn't object to is if they just said, you put in what you earn, and either you can choose either your spouse's or your own Social Security, but it's not gender-based. Mm-hmm. But meanwhile, from our history of the women who are now aging into 65 and older, they stay away from being absolutely poor because of Social Security.
Mm-hmm. So, well, when we look at all of this, it would seem to me that some of these politicians that are actually out there enacting these laws, that they have moms and dads and so forth and so on. So why do you think they would? And I know this is a hard question, but maybe you have some insight on it. Why would? Because I can't see me doing something that's going to directly affect my 85-year-old mother and people like her.
Yeah. There again, what water are they drinking?
Okay. Okay.
There's no logic.
Well,
I mean, even in the workforce, believe it or not, women have been more and more involved in employer-sponsored retirement plans.
Mm-hmm.
And look what we've done. We've been cutting the bottom out of pensions and retirement plans for anybody. And so there's got to be it's about safety net. I guess that is another term they use. But we've got to, this is what's so unchristian, Baron.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Mm-hmm.
Cannot tell me they're Christian, and these are the basic tenets of what Jesus preached and what he was all about. My gosh.
Mm-hmm.
To not think of the least among us, and it drives me crazy.
So Barb, how can people that are listening maybe have a teenage female daughter? How can they inspire and encourage that child to get involved at an early age and be prepared once you become 18? Because the role that's needed to be whole regarding women, it appears that there's going to be a continual attack on women rights, the rights of women, and all of those other things that we're now dealing with that have been dealt with back during the movement in the 40s and 50s on forward to now. What advice can you give to that mom that's out there listening right now who would like to encourage and inspire their daughter to get involved in public service, whether it's being elected or some type of consultant or whatever the case may be?
Well, and really the first thing is educating. It's educating, informing, and they can take every side in the book and talk about it, but to engage their children, to get them away from the video games, and for themselves, the women and the men, the fathers as well, to take whatever else they're doing in their lives, to have that time to devote to their kids and get them educated, because that's the part of the criminality of this, like with the Confederate flag and the whole business of it's my heritage. I know none of them that are sticking those flags in President Obama's face could not share and describe what actually happened in the Civil War and what the purpose was and how the South fought the North. And I know that they are not anywhere near that history. Mm-hmm. We got to get our schools better. So that's one thing, is just really pay attention to what they're learning in school and supplementing it. Read them books. Take them to their own clubs that talk about this. But there's great things like Girl Scouts and church groups. My kids were in a youth group from age, I think it was 9 that it started up through they graduated from high school. And so service, you're absolutely right, service. And I think scouting is still a pretty solid place. Mm-hmm. And there are other service clubs, I'm sure. But what my parents taught us, and there were 4 of us siblings, and 2 girls and 2 boys, and they said you have to always be involved in 3 things. One is something physical, something like sport for your health. One is musical or cultural, and one is service. Mm-hmm. And you need to have not necessarily even equal time, but you need to consider those. So I have to volunteer. That's why I'm so active with the Democratic Party, and I've put my service in a political way. But and was it Marian Wright Edelman who said, volunteering is the rent you pay for the time you spend on Earth?
That's very profound.
Yes, and I absolutely believe that.
Okay.
That you owe it. You owe it back to your community, and to the United States.
Right. I know, Barb. We've kept you on a little bit longer than what we agreed to, and what I'm going to do is. I know that the lines are open right now, and it's always kind of sticky situation because most of the time people like to listen, and there are a lot of people that's out there on the web that's listening as well, which they have the opportunity to chat in or whatever the case may be. But just for those who are out there listening, if there's any question or comment that you'd like to make, you may do so at this time, and you can address it to either myself or Miss Barbara Boyden Walters. You may do so at this time. We always give a pause, Barb, and allow those who are out there to have comments, because this is a community. We are trying to make a difference, and a lot of times when we are trying to make a difference, we may miss out on something that somebody else may see. So we always like to allow those, even in opposition, to come on and talk, as long as it's done in a respectful manner, fundamentally disagreeing, and we can always try to move forward. So did we touch on everything, Barb, that you'd like to touch on? Because we have plenty of time, but I don't want to hold you beyond that. But if there's anything else that you'd like to discuss, inspire, encourage, or whatever the case may be, you may do so at this time.
Oh, I'd love to hear from anyone in the audience. That'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah. Again,
I can go on and on, but I'd love to.
Oh yeah, and that's fine. When you talk about these complex issues regarding like politics, affirmative action, and I find, Barb, being elected for the past 23 years, that it's not that people don't want to do something. A lot of times they are not really aware of all of this, the laws, the specifics, regarding, because most people just deal with the surface aspect, of that. So when you look at a situation like that, I pretty much understand why people may not engage, because I know even from personal conversation, you find yourself talking more because some people just don't understand. And politics and public service is not for everybody. And I believe that, you're born into it, or you either develop, a love for it at some point down the road. So I never take it personal when people are listening and they decide not to engage, because it's kind of like, the preacher that's up there preaching. No one wants to interrupt him while he's, doing his sermon. So again, I fully understand everything that's going on, and I just appreciate everybody that's out there listening, because they could be doing something else rather than listening to you and I talk about issues of concern that are happening. Now, they may not agree with everything that has been said, but the fact is that if they go on Fox News, MSNBC, so forth and so on, they would not have the opportunity to even have a word into what we're talking about. So again, we extend that, that line open to them.
Yeah, no, that's great. And please feel free after the show, Baron, if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I'd be happy to. I'm a sucker for that. I love to engage. My background is in training and development, so I'm a teacher at heart, and love that aspect of my life. Right.
Well, I'll tell you, Barb, we have many conversations regarding education, regarding Common Core. We have all types of formats that you are welcome to talk about if there's a passion, especially having a teacher background. We're looking at ACT test scores. We're looking at some things, talking about providing sex education in the classroom. Now that we have, the same-sex marriage, how's that going to come down when, how you're going to teach this, how you're going to teach that. So right now, it's like an unstable atmosphere that's out there. And I think it's going to take the conversation that we're having, because if you look back in the 60s, when they integrated, I personally believe that the government and the people failed to have the conversations that were needed, and they felt like it was just going to work itself out. Well, it didn't work itself out, because we're still dealing with some of the evil effects of Jim Crow and some of the remnants of all of those things that happened back then. And I think based on what just took place, we should have that conversation. We should be open about it. We should be candid about it, whether we agree or disagree with it. It is now the law of the land, and we have to deal with it. And I'm not sure, your take on, on that. If you want to discuss it, fine. If not, I'll allow you the opportunity to give your closing statement, and we'll conclude the interview.
Well, I absolutely, and I do want to say, too, I began to think as you're talking about before and now, then and now, that it almost was, I think of my mother being so almost prudish, which she would even say about herself, about things you just didn't talk about and things you didn't do and things you didn't say. And it was almost we were almost too afraid to speak out, not just as well as women especially, but even other people. So there was all this stuff left unsaid, and it could have been left unsaid, I don't like black people, or it could have been unspoken, we're treating people poorly. I mean, in other words, it could be on all sides of the map, but we weren't being as vocal. And it seems like it's flipped to a point of we're so vocal and, as I said, not civil about it. And it's like we now have permission to do all this, but we're not doing it in any respectful way. So we flipped from one to the somewhere along the way, recognizing that we need to come together and have a mutual conversation, and share. We can share what's in us that's honest and truthful, even though it's maybe something that I'll find very ugly. But let's start there, and let's see where can we then find some kind of common understanding. Both ways were bad. Too quiet and too vocal, I'll tell you.
Right.
Somewhere in the middle that's civil.
Right. And when once again, when you look at what you just said, that's the issue. How do you bring somebody from the far left and somebody from the far right and try to at least find a middle of the road or even a common ground, because there's got to be something. Everybody brings something to the table, whether it's negative or positive. We all bring something to the table. So when you look at all of this, it appears that the younger generation, or the millennials, they are actually more acceptance to things that foreparents, maybe grandparent or a great grandparent, were more subject to accepting. So when you look at that, and I believe now, the more you try to force your belief on this younger generation, the more they rebel against you. And I think that's a positive, because if you try to force this old mentality, it pushes them away from that, and they accept more of freedom, free will, people to live how they choose to live, the acceptance of people, the diversity, and all of those type things. But when you look at your state of Texas, it appears that they want to be no longer part of the union. When you look at it from and how outlandish is that?
And the State Board of Education is such a horrible group of people. The policies, they actually have fought against teaching critical thinking skills because of the concern that it might lead children